From KGB to Kremlin, the Vladimir Putin story. What turns a poor boy from the streets of Leningrad into one of the most powerful men on earth? From fighting neighborhood bullies to controlling nuclear weapons, this is the extraordinary rise of Vladimir Putin, told like never before. If you've ever wondered how a former spy became Russia's longest-serving leader since Stalin, stay with me for the next 20 minutes. Hit that subscribe button to join Story-Driven English and improve your language skills through fascinating real-life stories. Now let's dive into the mysterious world of Vladimir Putin. Little Volodya sat on the cold, hard steps of his communal apartment building in Leningrad. The year was 1960, and 8-year-old Vladimir Putin was dreaming big dreams. Not about becoming a cosmonaut like Yuri Gagarin or a famous chess player like Mikhail Botvinnik. No, little Volodya had a different hero, the spy from his favorite movie. "One day, I will be a secret agent," he whispered to himself, his breath forming tiny clouds in the freezing Russian air. Little did he know that his childhood fantasy would not only come true, but would eventually lead him to become the most powerful man in Russia. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on October 7, 1952 in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, Soviet Union. He was the youngest of 3 children, but his 2 older brothers had died before he was born, one in infancy and the other of diphtheria during the terrible siege of Leningrad in World War II. This made Vladimir the only child of Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin and Maria Ivanovna Putina. Putins lived in a communal apartment, sharing a kitchen and bathroom with several other families. It was a tough life in post-war Soviet Russia. His father had been severely wounded during the war and worked as a factory foreman. His mother took odd jobs to make ends meet. Young Vladimir would often have to chase rats with a stick in the stairwell of their building. "We lived simply," Putin would later recall with a hint of nostalgia. "Cabbage soup, cutlets, pancakes. But on Sundays and holidays my mom would bake very tasty stuffed buns with cabbage, meat and rice and curd tarts." In school, Vladimir wasn't exactly a model student. He was small for his age and often got into fights with bigger boys who bullied him. This led him to take up Sambo, a Soviet martial art, and later judo, which would become his lifelong passion. "Before I started judo, I was a troublemaker, not a fighter," Putin once admitted with a rare smile. "But judo taught me to respect strength, both my own and others." By the age of 16, Putin had become quite good at judo, and had also developed an intense interest in spy novels and films. While other teenagers were dreaming about guitars and girls, Vladimir was reading books about intelligence officers and dreaming of joining the KGB, the Soviet Union's feared secret service. After finishing high school, Putin enrolled at Leningrad State University to study law. He was a serious student, focused on his goal. His university years were marked by hard work rather than wild parties. While other students were protesting and experimenting with Western music and fashion, Vladimir I kept to himself, studied diligently, and continued practicing judo. "In university, many called me the moth, because I was always drawn to the light of knowledge," Putin joked years later. Though perhaps it was because I was quiet and could appear suddenly, just like a moth. During his university years, Putin caught the attention of KGB recruiters. They approached him in his 4th year, and his childhood dreams seemed within reach. He graduated from law school in 1975, and instead of becoming a lawyer, he went straight into the KGB, training at the 401st KGB school in Leningrad. The young KGB officer was first assigned to counterintelligence, monitoring foreigners and consular officials in Leningrad. It wasn't exactly the James Bond lifestyle he had imagined. More paperwork than parachutes, more surveillance than shootouts. But Putin was patient. He knew big things often start small. In 1984, after completing advanced training at the Yuri Andropov Red Banner Institute, Putin was sent to Dresden, East Germany. His official cover was as a translator and director of the Soviet-German House of Friendship. In reality, he was spying on NATO and recruiting informants. Life in Dresden was comfortable compared to the Soviet Union. Putin and his wife Lyudmila, whom he had married in 1983, lived in a nice apartment and enjoyed Western goods unavailable back home. Their first daughter, Maria, was born in 1985, and their second daughter, Katerina, arrived in 1986. In Germany, I discovered that sausages could actually taste good, Putin once quipped. In the Soviet Union, we had just one type of sausage, the mystery meat kind. Then came 1989, and the Berlin Wall fell. The Soviet Empire in Eastern Europe was crumbling. One night, a mob of angry Germans surrounded the KGB headquarters in Dresden. Putin called for military backup, but the response he received would forever change his worldview. "Moscow is silent," came the reply. There would be no help. The mighty Soviet Union was abandoning its own people. Putin and his colleagues frantically burned sensitive documents as the crowd grew outside. He even stepped out unarmed to confront the mob, telling them the building was a Soviet military installation protected by armed guards who had orders to shoot. The bluff worked, but the lesson was clear. Power that appears unshakable can vanish. Overnight, Putin returned to Leningrad, soon to be renamed St. Petersburg, in early 1990 as the Soviet Union entered its final days. He took a job as assistant to the rector of Leningrad State University, but this was just a cover for his continued KGB work. Soon he became an advisor to Anatoly Sobchak, his former law professor, who had become the first democratically elected mayor of St. Petersburg. When the Soviet Union officially collapsed in December 1991, many KGB officers found themselves lost. Their world turned upside down. But not Putin. He resigned from the KGB and fully joined Sobchak's team as the head of the Committee for External Relations of the St. Petersburg mayor's office. "I didn't leave intelligence service. I just changed the front line," Putin would later explain with his characteristic dry humor. The early 1990s in Russia were wild times. The economy collapsed, crime soared, and ordinary Russians suffered immensely. Meanwhile, a few well-connected people became fabulously wealthy overnight, buying state-owned companies for pennies on the dollar. These were the oligarchs who would later play such important roles in Putin's Russia. Putin rose through the ranks of St. Petersburg's government, gaining a reputation as an efficient administrator and loyal ally to Sobchak. When Sobchak lost his re-election bid in 1996, Putin refused to work with the new administration and instead moved to Moscow. In Moscow, Putin's career accelerated at a dizzying pace. He joined the presidential administration, quickly rising to become the head of the Federal Security Service, FSB, the successor to his beloved KGB, by 1998. A year later, President Boris Yeltsin appointed Putin as prime minister. Yeltsin, a heavy drinker whose health was failing, was looking for a successor. He cycled through several prime ministers, but in Putin, he found someone who seemed perfect, loyal, capable, and not visibly ambitious for power. On December 31st, 1999, in a surprise New Year's Eve announcement, Yeltsin resigned as president and named Putin as acting president. "I'm tired. I'm leaving. Take care of Russia," Yeltsin told the nation, effectively handing the nuclear briefcase to a man most Russians barely knew. Putin, the obscure former spy, was suddenly in charge of the world's largest country, with the world's largest nuclear arsenal. Poor Russia, some foreign newspapers joked. From a drunken bear to an unknown mouse. They couldn't have been more wrong. 3 months later, in March 2000, Putin won the presidential election with 53% of the vote. His campaign was built around a simple promise: to restore order after the chaos of the 1990s. Putin's timing was perfect. Just months before becoming acting president, Russia had faced a series of apartment bombings blamed on Chechen terrorists. Putin responded with tough talk and a second war in Chechnya. His approval ratings soared. "We will chase terrorists everywhere," Putin declared in his most famous early quote. "If we find them in the toilet, we'll kill them in the toilet." Regular Russians who had endured a decade of humiliation and hardship following the Soviet collapse loved his strong language and stronger actions. Here, at last, was a leader who wouldn't be pushed around. Once in power, Putin moved quickly to consolidate control. He reined in the oligarchs who had gained enormous wealth and influence under Yeltsin. The message was simple: stay out of politics, pay your taxes, and you can keep your riches. Those who defied him, like media tycoon Vladimir Gusinsky and oil magnate Mikhail Khodorkovsky, found themselves facing criminal charges or forced into exile. "I play chess, not checkers," Putin reportedly told one oligarch who complained. "In chess, when you capture a piece, you don't give it back." Putin's first 2 terms as president, 2000-2008, were marked by economic recovery, thanks largely to rising oil prices. The average Russian saw their quality of life improve dramatically. Salaries were paid on time, pensions increased, and a new middle class emerged. Putin's popularity soared to heights that Western leaders could only dream of. "It's easy to be popular when people compare you to the 1990s, a Russian joke went. Even a potato would get elected if it promised stability. The Constitution limited Putin to 2 consecutive terms. So, in 2008, he arranged for his loyal ally, Dmitry Medvedev, to become president while he served as prime minister. Nobody in Russia was fooled about who was really in charge. It's like when your parents go out and leave your older brother in charge, a Moscow taxi driver explained to a foreign journalist. The older brother can say yes to ice cream, but everyone knows who really makes the rules. In 2012, Putin returned to the presidency in an election marred by protests. The Constitution had been amended to extend presidential terms from 4 years to 6, meaning Putin could potentially stay in power till 2024. As Putin entered his 3rd term, his approach to governance evolved. The relatively liberal technocrat of the early 2000s gave way to a more conservative, nationalist leader. He positioned Russia as a defender of traditional values against Western liberalism, and sought to restore Russia's status as a great power on the world stage. For Russians, a strong state is not an anomaly to fight against, Putin told the Federal Assembly. Quite the contrary, it is the source and guarantor of order, the initiator and driving force of all change. Putin's personal life remained largely private, a rarity in the age of social media and 24/7 news cycles. He and Lyudmila announced their divorce in 2013 after 30 years of marriage, and his daughters have been kept almost entirely out of the public eye. "I have a private life in which I do not permit interference," he once stated firmly, when asked about rumors of a relationship with former Olympic gymnast Alina Kabaeva. "It must be respected." Meanwhile, Putin cultivated a public image as a man of action. State media regularly showed him riding horses shirtless, practicing judo, playing hockey, and engaging in various outdoor activities. He descended in a miniature submarine to the bottom of Lake Baikal, tranquilized a tiger, and flew with migrating birds in a motorized hang glider. "I'm not a woman, so I don't have bad days," he once told American filmmaker Oliver Stone, displaying the macho attitude that has defined his public persona. In 2014, Putin made his boldest geopolitical move yet, annexing Crimea from Ukraine following the ouster of Ukraine's pro-Russian president. The move drew international condemnation and economic sanctions, but sent Putin's domestic approval ratings to nearly 90%. "Crimea has always been an inseparable part of Russia in people's hearts and minds," Putin declared, tapping into powerful nationalist sentiments. The following years saw Russia become increasingly assertive on the world stage, intervening militarily in Syria, allegedly interfering in elections in the United States and Europe, and standing firm against Western pressure. In 2020, Putin pushed through constitutional changes allowing him to potentially remain president until 2036, when he would be 83 years old. Critics called it a power grab. Supporters said it ensured stability. "In some countries, they've had the same people in power for 50 years, Putin remarked. "Is that a problem? No, if people vote for them." In 2022, Putin launched a special military operation in Ukraine, marking one of the most significant geopolitical events of the 21st century, and bringing Russia's relations with the West to their lowest point since the Cold War. Through it all, Putin has remained an enigma, the inscrutable former spy who gives little away about his true thoughts and feelings. Even those who have worked closely with him for decades claim they don't really know him. "I've spent thousands of hours with Vladimir Vladimirovich," a former aide once confided, "but sometimes I wonder if I know him any better than someone who has only seen him on television." The boy who once chased rats in a Leningrad communal apartment now controls the world's largest nuclear arsenal and has shaped Russia's destiny for over 2 decades. From KGB agent to Kremlin leader, Vladimir Putin's journey is a testament to ambition, timing, and an uncanny ability to navigate the treacherous waters of Russian politics. Whether viewed as a strong leader who restored Russian pride or an authoritarian who stifled democracy, one thing is certain: Vladimir Putin has left an indelible mark on Russia and the world. As Putin himself once said with characteristic understated confidence, history will judge. And there you have it, the remarkable journey of Vladimir Putin from the cold streets of Leningrad to the highest corridors of power in the Kremlin. Was this story what you expected? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed learning English through this fascinating biography, please hit the like button and share it with friends who are also improving their English. Don't forget to subscribe to Story-Driven English for more captivating stories that will boost your vocabulary while entertaining you. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next story. Key vocabulary. Repeated throughout. KGB. The main security agency for the Soviet Union from 1954 until 1991. Kremlin. The fortified complex in Moscow that serves as the official residence of the President of Russia Soviet Union, a former communist country that existed from 1922 to 1991. Communal apartment. A form of housing where multiple families live together, sharing kitchen and bathroom. Judo. A modern martial art and combat sport originating in Japan. Intelligence officer. A person who collects and analyzes information to protect national security. Oligarch. A very rich business leader with a great deal of political influence. Prime Minister. The head of government in many countries. Constitution. A set of fundamental principles or established precedents according to which a state is governed. Annexation. The act of incorporating territory into another geopolitical entity. Sanctions. Penalties. Imposed on a country to pressure it to comply with international law. Geopolitical. Relating to politics, especially international relations, as influenced by geographical factors. Predecessor. A person who held a job or office before the current holder. Successor. A person who follows next in order, especially a person who takes over an office or position. Enigma. A person or thing that is mysterious, puzzling, or difficult to understand.